Riding Through the Solar System, Cosmic Love. Cosmic by Red Velvet, a song about a love without boundaries. We know that the song's lyrics are very clear in expressing this. But did you know that the music video is full of symbolism that helps us dive deeper into its story? In this video, we'll talk about them. But before we start, remember to subscribe, turn on notifications, and copy the video link. That would help us a lot. Now, let's get started. The lyrics of Cosmic explore the theme of love as a transcendental and magical experience, using cosmic metaphors to describe the connection between two people. Through its narrative, the song portrays love as something that goes beyond the ordinary, elevating it to an almost celestial level, where feelings are compared to stars, galaxies, and the solar system. The song conveys the idea that love is a powerful and inexplicable force that brings people together, even if they are strangers at first. This love is presented as something cosmic, suggesting that it is vast, mysterious, and beautiful, almost like an inevitable destiny written in the stars. Now, taking as a starting point the idea that love is a place where you can't help but end up, we see how at the beginning of this story, our protagonist, without going unnoticed, lands on this curious planet. Here, there is a small community where the members of Red Velvet reside. 𝘮𝘮𝘭𝘥 signals the rest using a flag, and as they cross the forest, back and forth, they welcome her. We can see several messages here. First, we see 𝘮𝘮𝘭𝘥 waving a red flag, which tells us that the arrival of this new traveler sparked an intense desire for love in the Red Velvet girls. Along with this, they feel a sense of victory, knowing they will fall in love again. Let me explain. According to the general symbolism of flags, they represent victory and affirmation. Combined with the meaning of the color red, which is associated with the planet Mars, it symbolizes a life-giving principle, passion, and emotion. The feeling of victory arises from the awakening of an intense emotion: love. Next, we see the rest of the members crossing the forest along with this community dressed in white, with them being the only ones wearing brightly colored dresses. What's important here is the scene where they are returning, carrying our protagonist on a palanquin. We see the girls in a line, in a specific order: yellow or gold, blue, pink, and purple. These implicitly represent the stages of love. Yellow or gold, in its negative aspect, is related to the starting point, that is, the beginning of falling in love. Blue represents devotion and innocence. Pink stands for sensuality and affection. Finally, purple embodies, in this context, power and spirituality. A love that starts innocently, has its foundation in the material and physical connection, such as sexuality, but then ascends to the spiritual, becoming a mutual emotional dependence, where love reaches its highest point. Adding to this, they are surrounded by people dressed in white, carrying the traveler on a palanquin, symbolizing that this love is accompanied by the best of intentions, as white is associated with purity, enlightenment, and ascension. The palanquin, or more specifically, the act of carrying a palanquin, speaks of veneration. But what about Joy? She wears a black dress and does not appear in the line. Why? The color black, associated with penance and decay, represents death in this case, the end of this love. But if it's a fundamental part of love, like everything else, since everything that has a beginning also has an end, why isn't she in the line? I'll explain that later. In this sequence, we see our protagonist still on the palanquin when suddenly, it is revealed that her hand is tied with a red thread, which 𝘮𝘮𝘭𝘥 pulls through a star-shaped window. We also see Joy with a red thread, but hers doesn't lead anywhere. The scene ends with the group members adorning the traveler with flowers while she watches them from afar. Now, let me explain the messages. First, we see our protagonist on the palanquin, while 𝘮𝘮𝘭𝘥, along with 𝘮𝘮𝘮, watches her from a small star-shaped window. The fact that 𝘮𝘮𝘮 and 𝘮𝘮𝘮 are watching her through the star window tells us that they don't give their love to just anyone. This makes sense if we consider the symbolism of the star in its individual representation. In many cultures and traditions, a star symbolizes guidance, hope, and destiny. Being identified with it, as referenced in the music video by the thread connecting our protagonist through the star figure, suggests that a person has a special purpose or destiny reserved for a few. This chosen one could refer to someone with a unique role in the cosmos. It may also be linked to the connection with the divine or the transcendental, where the individual reaches union with something greater than themselves. In other words, the love that the Red Velvet members have for her is no coincidence. It's a love of destiny, something beyond what has been seen in the world. Now, what about the red threads present in these scenes? The thread symbolizes connection on any plane: spiritual, biological, social, etc. The act of threading, as seen with both Wendy and Joy, is equivalent to creating and sustaining life, or in this case, creating and sustaining love. But if Joy's thread is not connected to our traveler, what message does this convey? It's simple. Remember that Joy, wearing black, represents the end of love, the final stage. It makes sense that her thread isn't connected to the protagonist because this love, at this point in the story, is far from reaching its end. This also explains why, in the first scene, she doesn't appear in the line with the other members. At the end of the sequence, we see the members of Red Velvet decorating their beloved's crown with flowers while she watches them through a small opening. This tells us that our protagonist has already noticed the love they are giving her, because receiving the illumination from a light source, as seen in the brief scene, means gaining awareness. In this context, becoming aware of the love the Red Velvet members are offering her. Then, as the music video presents the first chorus, in one of the scenes we see Irene walking around the room and stopping in front of the mirror. Mirrors are associated with imagination and consciousness, serving as a means to reflect the reality of the visible world. They are linked to thought as an organ of self-contemplation and a reflection of the universe. In other words, the Red Velvet members have high expectations for how this love will develop, and they will strive to bring them to reality. This is also reflected at the start of the chorus.
I got a plan, just you and I.
A bit further into the chorus, we see several hands in the scene. First, 𝘮𝘮's hand, followed by 𝘮𝘮's and Joy's hands intertwining. 𝘮𝘮's hand is connected to the symbolism of the number 5. The hand, with its 5 fingers, has a symbolic analogy with the human figure and is related to the number 5, which in many traditions symbolizes love, health, and humanity. Things they feel and hope for in this relationship, especially love. As for 𝘮𝘮 and Joy's hands, being intertwined, they speak to the symbolism of connection, expressing the idea of an indestructible bond between all that is real, suggesting an unavoidable and continuous connection between phenomena. This indicates that at this point in the story, they are forming a strong bond, at least on their side. This is reaffirmed by the final scene of the chorus, where the girls are hanging a dress on a tree using a red rope. They now have a bond that, for our protagonist, will be difficult to break, even confirmed by the staff in the music video's behind-the-scenes footage.
The red thread got tangled just before. They keep casting a spell with the red thread. The earthling fell. This is the extension of it. That's why we use the red rope. Like saying, you can't leave here. You can just hold it together like this.
At the beginning of the second verse, we see the members of Red Velvet dancing in red outfits. After a brief scene cut, we see our traveler trying to flee, with 𝘮𝘮 trying to stop her, running after her through the room. Then, we see 𝘮𝘮 among the flowers, watching our protagonist, causing her to run away again. As I mentioned before, red represents passion, emotion, and the life-giving principle. Alongside Irene looking at herself in the mirror during the first chorus, this tells us that Red Velvet and their beloved have just reached the third stage of love: physical contact. This is subtly hinted at in the next shot. If we pay attention, it's a superimposed scene of the group members and our protagonist. Now, why does she want to run away after this? There could be several reasons, but without fear of being wrong, the fear of emotional intimacy may be the reason in this case. For some people, the act of sex can deepen the emotional bond, which can be terrifying if they are not ready for a more serious relationship. This fear of vulnerability can lead someone to end the relationship before a stronger emotional bond forms. Some studies on fear of intimacy indicate that certain people feel anxiety when they perceive that a relationship is becoming more emotionally intimate, like alexithymia and self-differentiation, the role of fear of intimacy and insecure adult attachment, which points out that fear of intimacy refers to the inhibited ability of an individual to share personally significant thoughts and emotions with another valuable individual. This is portrayed in the music video when we see our protagonist fleeing from 𝘮𝘮𝘰, who represents spirituality and emotional connection, the next stage of love. This is confirmed by the brief scene where something glowing in reddish tones is seen inside her chest. Fear of emotional intimacy? When the pre-chorus begins, we see 𝘮𝘮𝘰 inside a circle formed by people accompanied by flowers in a pool. Then we have Wendy and Irene lying on a bed. And we end with 𝘮𝘮𝘰, 𝘮𝘮𝘰, and Joy playing with flowers in the vegetation. In the first scene, we are told that this is not the first time the Red Velvet Girls have felt such love for someone. The feeling of love is not something experienced only once in a lifetime. According to the meaning of the circle, it symbolizes the eternal return, especially when it has no marked beginning or end. This means that the beginning and the end coincide, representing the idea of a perpetual and endless cycle. Love is something that will never cease to exist, as that feeling always returns. This is even reinforced by an earlier scene. Do you remember the tree with dresses? The dress we see them hanging up represents their current love and the other times they've experienced it. Next, in the second scene, where we see Wendy sleeping next to Irene on a bed, we have the image of the sun and the moon in the middle. This tells us that despite the transparency they show in their feelings towards our protagonist, represented by the sun, there is still some mystery about how this relationship will unfold. In relation to the tarot, the moon represents a vision influenced by intuition and imagination, different from the clarity and objectivity of the sun. This could be related to the scenes of our traveler trying to run away, as from her perspective, this fear of emotional intimacy is valid. Is it good to express my feelings? What will her reaction be if I show her how I feel? Is it a good idea to give more of myself? The fear of these answers is what the moon represents. And with the final scene of this sequence, where 𝘮𝘮𝘰, 𝘮𝘮𝘰, and Joy are playing with the flowers in the vegetation, it tells us that they are making sacrifices for this relationship to thrive, as vegetation symbolizes death and resurrection. It tells us that for this love to bloom, just like a flower, something must die first. It could be a bad habit, a harmful thought, an excessive feeling of pride, etc. During the sequence of the second chorus, we see our protagonist running away quickly, trying to venture into the forest. She is then pursued again by 𝘮𝘮𝘰 and ends up on the ground thanks to Joy. This takes us back to the previous explanation, where we discussed that our traveler is afraid of being emotionally vulnerable with the Red Velvet Girls. Thus, among the three members who watch her flee, it is 𝘮𝘮𝘰, the embodiment of emotional connection, who decides to chase her. When the chase ends, in the bridge of the song, we see the Red Velvet Girls with their lover, all together at a round table, covering their eyes with flowers. While this may reference the movie, it can also symbolize an adapted message related to the song in the music video. The act of covering their eyes with flowers may symbolize peace and death or a form of rebirth. Visually, this act conveys the idea that by closing their eyes with something as natural as flowers, they are surrendering to a natural cycle, which in this case is the process of loving passionately. Our protagonist has decided to fully embrace this feeling, stopping the struggle and enjoying it, accepting it in all its facets. This is demonstrated in the shots of the members, both laughing and crying. This aligns with the lyrics as this sequence continues.
너는 성큼 다가와 끌린 손 내밀며 함께 떠나자 해 보지 못한 것들 찾아 해 I just can't say goodnight.
To end our story with a dance around a mayo tree or maypole. This is a traditional element in various European festivities, especially in the celebration of May Day or during spring festivals. People usually dance around it, holding the ribbons in their hands and weaving them while moving around it, as seen in the music video. The mayo tree. In this sequence, aligned with the message of the music video, can be interpreted as a world axis, or the axis of the world, a mythological concept that represents the center of the cosmos, where heaven, earth, and the underworld meet. This interpretation places it within a broader symbolic framework, where the pole becomes a point of union between the human and the divine. That is to say, now the Red Velvet Girls and our protagonist are fully loving each other. And while they are experiencing ups and downs in their relationship, the fact that they are holding hands and not letting go indicates that they have already formed a strong bond and are constantly working to strengthen it even more. And this was the analysis of Cosmic. Remember that if you have another perspective on the MV, you can freely share it in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end, and see you soon.